Well, the stimulus bill that Congress passed, signed into, I guess, law, making it official by President Trump. I have a look at the PDF version saved online. It's about 800 pages. It's a wide-ranging document. It covers a lot of things. I mean, from letting corporations get tax deductions for what they spend on alcohol to create hand sanitizer. I mean, it's a very wide encompassing bill. I'm sure there's a lot of pork log rolled into it somehow that you could extract or infer from it, but I wanted to focus on one provision that I think is very telling and most concerning about what I believe is proof that America isn't, at least what governs and what really runs us is a puppet master behind the scenes, is an oligarchy. The Freedom of Information Act, and I am including the provisions of the current Freedom of Information Act below, so if you want to review all the dry legal language you can, it's certainly there. It's available for your analysis. What would that have to do with the stimulus? Normally it wouldn't. The stimulus just implies money or credit or something, financial assistance for businesses, individuals, corporations, maybe sovereign states, etc. But in this instance, the Freedom of Information Act, that's somehow included in the stimulus bill. And so I'm including the link for the stimulus bill itself, all 800 pages, so you can see the section where it does address the Freedom of Information Act as how it relates to the stimulus bill. And I'm also including a link to the actual Freedom of Information Act as well, so you can see that in the stimulus bill, where they do reference a certain section and code of the Freedom of Information Act, you can match it up with the actual Freedom of Information Act's language to see that that's what they're actually referring to. The stimulus bill exempts the Federal Reserve Board from Freedom of Information Act request, at least until the coronavirus ends. If you read the language henceforth in the actual stimulus bill. So, given the weight of the circumstances, the Fed still manages to get more freedom, while the rest of everybody else is probably still under house arrest and subject to constant surveillance. So, but I guess we shouldn't complain, because if you're one of those lucky people, you'll get a check for $1,200 or something sometime. But nonetheless, as I mentioned, I think the stimulus bill still would confirm, even to the most sanguine souls, that the U.S. is run by an oligarchy. For example, the stimulus provides $454 billion to the Federal Reserve, the Fed, which, in their world of suspended delusion, forged by fiat powers, can stretch, manufacture, extend, bend said money into $4 trillion worth of loans. So that's difficult, I guess, to really visualize for myself, but the White House economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, works for President Trump. He did say that they would be using they meaning the Fed, would be using the $454 billion being lent to them through this stimulus bill. They could somehow create various lending facilities that would stretch that $450 billion plus into up to $4 trillion of loans. Now, how they do that, that's another question. But, so Congress approved that in the stimulus, $1,200, for the hoi polloi, but will allocate $450 billion to the Fed so they can perform acts of alchemy that would probably baffle even the most omniscient God by lending $4 trillion to who exactly? If you're hearing me talk about this, you're probably not going to get any of that. Of course, they use a lot of technical language that creates images of elaborate financial architecture with terms like facility. They use that one a lot. So, in this fancy language notwithstanding, it's simply sanctioned currency debauchery. So now the important question, in my view, is trying to comprehend the logistics of this alchemy of turning stones into bread in 2020. $454 billion of taxpayer money given to the Fed so they can somehow lend up to $4 trillion. this will probably go to shore up the corporate and municipal bond market. I know there's a lot of other lending facilities will be created that they can lend to businesses that are medium-sized. They're too small to get small business loans and be swept into that rubric of assistance, but they're also too small to go to the bond markets and have underwriters float bond issues for them. So will there be mid-tier financing for them? I don't know. It's talked about, but I couldn't extract that from the bill myself. So the answer to this question also answers questions about who and what really wields the most power in our society. For example, with this, one of the various lending facilities being established by the Fed, they did appoint BlackRock as a fiduciary. And I'm going to include another quote that's going to be provided directly from the New York Fed. So if you open it, you'll see whereon they do announce they're appointing BlackRock as a fiduciary to oversee one of their various lending credit facilities, specifically this one for corporate credit in the secondary market. Quote, BlackRock will act as a fiduciary to the facility, meaning the credit facility. BlackRock will be governed by stringent information barriers and conflict of interest policies currently in place for the firm, for FMA, which have been previously reviewed and found to be satisfactory to the New York Fed. The New York Fed will review these policies in light of the new engagement, and BlackRock will adjust to these policies as needed. If you see just how powerful BlackRock is, what kind of resources they have, how much they own, them being in this position, it's almost like the fox guarding the henhouse, in my opinion. And they'll probably be in a position to buy up a lot of assets at bargain basement prices, pennies on the dollar. Maybe not, but as a layman in my position, that's what it looks like. So you can score another one for the oligarchy. Thank you.